Welcome, citizens of Asgard, to Geek Salad, the Road to Infinity War. Today we are talking about Thor, the Dark World. I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike.
And today we discuss the walnuts of the MCU. Because they are this movie is nobody's favorite.
I don't mind walnuts.
Do you mind this movie?
I kind of mind this movie.
I don't mind this movie. Obviously, we'll get into that, but is it my favorite? No. All right, so we are talking about 2013's Thor: The Dark World, the sequel to... It's tough to say this. Thor: The Dark World, the sequel to 2011's Thor, and...
I'll stop at you.
Oh man, I'm just getting so tongue-tied right now. Anyway, this was the follow-up to not only Thor but to the Avengers. This is Thor's next big adventure after the Avengers. This is very much a phase 2 movie where Thor goes back to find Jane Foster. And has to enlist the help of his half-brother Loki, who is now in prison.
Because the evil Dark Elves, led by Malekith, are trying to engulf the universe in darkness.
In the ether, which we will later learn is an Infinity Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Spoilers, by the way. All right, let's just get right into it. What works about this movie?
I just watched this one yesterday, and I can say without doubt that every single scene with Tom Hiddleston as Loki is a glory to watch.
He is still a wonder to behold in these movies. That honestly has not changed at all.
In fact, I would say without him, at least for me, I don't think this movie works. At least not works as well anyway.
No, I completely agree with that. I like the chemistry between him and Chris Hemsworth.
Oh yeah. That's never been in doubt.
Yeah. I thought that worked really well. Some of the stuff from Asgard still looks beautiful.
Mm. Yeah.
The other nice thing about this movie is that it does move, and this is just such a backhanded compliment. This movie runs at a nice brisk pace.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, this thing clocks in just under 2 hours, or just over the 2 hour mark. It's not like the 2.5 hours of the Avengers or anything like that.
You know what's kind of funny is that this came to me as I watched it. Each of these movies has Thor destroying more and more of Asgard.
Pretty much.
In the first movie, he destroyed the Rainbow Bridge. And the second movie, he's like completely decimating the main hall with his ship.
Yep.
And we'll get into what happens in the third movie.
Right. I mean, that stuff just works about the movie. I hate to say, for a movie that is not outwardly offensive in any way, and is quite honestly, it doesn't rank as my least favorite Marvel movie. It floats around the bottom. It definitely, and I think this is a lot of people. It floats around the bottom, but it is not your least favorite. I think for most people, it either goes to Incredible Hulk because you only watched it the one time, or Iron Man 2, which is not as good of a movie as The Dark World.
Yeah, for me, Iron Man 2 is at the bottom. Incredible Hulk is actually like I think 3 or 4 up above, because I will watch that one again. I have fun with that one, but this one is right there, right above Iron Man 2.
Right. This one kind of falls into the same thing as Iron Man 3 also, where it's not like, unless you're doing something like you were also going online to discuss this movie, you don't tend to proactively seek this one out.
Yeah. I mean, other than bringing in the Infinity Stone of what I think is Reality Gem.
Yeah.
There's really not a whole lot of reason to watch this one again.
Right. All right. So let's go into what doesn't work about this movie. And I'm going to start by the fact that it feels like a sequel.
Yeah.
And this is honestly the first movie since Iron Man 2 that really had that weight of a follow-up to another somewhat better movie. And I mean, every follow-up movie feels like a sequel. And I understand this is technically only the second Heroes sequel, not counting the Avengers for anything in that. But there's only at this point been multiple Iron Man movies. So this is the first, other Avengers sequel. Which, by the way, not only outgrossed Thor, but did a lot better than Thor did box office wise.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, to be fair, Thor was the one that nobody was like, how are they going to do this? And, kind of Brandon all Shakespearean. He's a god in this weird Asgard floating alien place. It's a lot to take in, especially if you're just getting used to the universe.
Right. Alan Taylor came off of Game of Thrones, and it does show. He definitely has a good eye for the universe, even though, and something else that doesn't work about this movie, Asgard doesn't seem as special this time around.
Yeah.
I remember when we saw Thor in 2011, our eyes had just popped out of how beautiful it looked. And now Asgard's just kind of there.
Well, I mean, beyond that, they don't really do a whole lot with just exploring Asgard itself. Asgard is just a setting for the action to take place in.
Exactly. And the final battle with Malekith is done in a realm that honestly would not have looked out of place in Justice League.
Well, I mean, it kind of bounces.
Wasteland.
Yeah, it bounces from the I think that's the Dark Elves planet.
Yeah.
To Earth, and that like square in London, and back and forth.
Right, because it's got an interdimensional hop.
Yeah.
The villain doesn't work in this movie. Malekith is one of the least compelling, interesting villains in a cinematic universe that is, to some, not to all, because I do have some disagreements with that, plagued by a villain problem. He doesn't help matters.
No, actually, for me, I think he is the weakest villain in all of the Marvel movies. I mean,
maybe close. Yeah, Laufey wasn't great either, but
well, I barely count Laufey as a villain because he was in the movie for like 2 minutes.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this guy, you get what he's trying to do, but it's just. He's just a mustache twirling bad guy. He's like, oh, I'm going to make everything dark. Ooh.
I shall exact my revenge on Odin.
Except it wasn't even Odin that took him down. It was Odin's father.
Yeah. Another thing that doesn't work, the supporting cast just doesn't look like, with the exception of Stellan Skarsgård, nobody else in this movie who wasn't Chris Hemsworth or Tom Hiddleston, and even to some extent Anthony Hopkins, nobody looked like they wanted to be there.
You know what? I will say I did still enjoy Kat
Dennings?
No. Warriors
Good.
3.
I have thoughts.
The Warriors 3, the guy who Zach Levi.
Oh yeah.
He looked like he was having fun as was it Fandral?
Yeah. They usually look like they're having a good time doing that. I'm glad Ray Stevenson got to do something else after the Punisher thing didn't pan out.
Yeah.
But Kat Dennings' part was obviously beefed up because of Two Broke Girls.
Yeah.
And she was kind of the breakout for Thor. And she's, I don't want to say wasted, because I think there was way too much of her. But her comedy is such that it should have been left alone in the first movie, and then maybe she was never revisited after that. Because she's just a genuinely awful human being.
She's actually not my least favorite part of this movie.
Oh, would that be Natalie Portman?
That would be the Natalie Portman that's you know what? That is the Natalie Portman that 100% is telling you, I don't give an F. I'm trying to keep my language down here.
I understand that.
But yeah, she you could tell right from her first scene she doesn't want to be there. She's under contract, and she could just walk off the set and nobody would notice.
She was about 3 years removed from that Oscar at this point, so understandably, you signed up for something, you don't want to do it anymore, and all you got to do is show up for this one, and then just throw a couple of facials here and there.
She and Jennifer Lawrence probably went to the same I don't care acting school anymore.
Exactly. And now Jennifer Lawrence is still coming back for another X-Men, so.
I don't get it. I didn't care to see Mystique in the last one. I don't want to see her in the next one either. They're
making her too big of a thing, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Thor: The Dark World.
Another thing that didn't really work for me. Well, I don't know if you want to go more into Natalie Portman.
You can.
Well, I was just going to say another thing that doesn't really work for me is that this is probably the least humorous of all the Marvel movies.
Yeah, considering how funny Chris Hemsworth is.
Oh yeah.
Even in Avengers, it's not like he had to work his way up to this. He was funny in Thor, funny in the event. Yeah, God, never thought I'd actually use this phrase. It's a superhero movie. And not the fun, good kind of superheroes movies that we get spoiled with now. This is what, you get when you do a PG-13 superhero movie. This is like an Avi Arad superhero movie.
You are not wrong.
I'm gonna do that because that is just.
Yeah, I mean, I timed it, and like the first joke or kind of humorous saying doesn't hit until like 10, 15 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And then, beyond like Stellan Skarsgård running around Stonehenge naked, which is always kind of funny.
Yeah.
And Kat Dennings' half-assed attempts at humor, which most of the time don't work.
No, they don't.
There's really no humor or levity in the movie.
The other issue too, I think, is, and this is what worked with Thor, is that you weren't immediately thrust into the world of Asgard. There was you essentially ended up on Earth first. You started on Earth, you meet Thor, and then you go back and do the story. And this does it the way that you shouldn't do these anymore, which is like, let's bore the audience. We need to suck the audience in. So let's tell them this long, drawn-out story of how the Dark Elves once tried to conquer all the 9 realms.
Oh god, yeah, that story just went on and on. I mean, this is a reason. Like this director, what was his name again?
Alan Taylor.
A story like you can tell absolutely from this movie, he absolutely fits in the type of story that they tell in Game of Thrones. I'm assuming.
Yes, and I'll agree with you because I've watched every episode multiple times.
But that type of storytelling does not work for the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It doesn't. This easily could have, again, been a Brian movie again and might have had a little more life in it. So, all right, let's move on because it's just starting to get a little negative in here now. In the grand scheme of things, how does this fit into the MCU?
Well, I mean, like we said, it does bring in the reality stone, so it introduces a vital moment.
It leads up to Infinity War better than Iron Man 3 does.
That is true.
Honestly, here's my thought. Thor Ragnarok rendered this movie irrelevant.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Thor. I would watch Thor Ragnarok 24 hours straight before I would bother to watch this one again.
Right. It's, again, there was some good stuff about this movie, and it's an inoffensive movie. This isn't like, no, I don't think anybody who went to go see this movie in the theaters, and this is one of 2 MCU movies I did not see in the movie theater. So I don't know what your reactions were when you walked out of the theater, or Joe's or Catherine's or anything like that, but I'm assuming they were genuinely positive.
It was a positive one, but it wasn't the like awe and in shock and that I'd had from things like, obviously of the Avengers, Captain America, even the first Thor. I really, really enjoyed Thor. I mean, this one was it's all right. Like I said, any scene with Tom Hiddleston, and especially Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth together, you have some really amazing moments. Like especially when Loki is in prison.
Right.
He has like his scene with Renee Russo is a beautiful scene.
It is, and when she dies, it affects him, and I think that works really, really well.
Yeah,
it's one, you know, it is a very human moment in a movie that could have used more of them.
Yeah. There are shining moments. I'm talking shining moments in this movie, but they're interspaced with long periods of I don't care.
Right. Now, the other thing with this movie now, and this is really the last movie in the MCU that doesn't try to redefine a genre afterwards. Yeah. This is the last quote-unquote superhero movie before we move into Winter Soldier, and then they start taking on the distinct likenesses of various types of film genre.
Well, for the solo movies, yes. I still think Age of Ultron is still kind of a quasi-superhero movie.
No, yes. But the individual movies had their own flavor. Going forward, this is the last one that doesn't have a distinct flavor. It's a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
After this, things start to take their own personalities, and you can better define the sequels, especially going from Winter Soldier to Civil War, you know?
Yeah. Actually, that kind of makes me think, when did Ike Perlmutter break with Kevin Feige? Was it around this time?
What's that?
Was it around this time?
Oh, maybe.
It was 2015. When
so right around the production time for Civil War.
That makes sense, because that's when it really feels like Feige kind of was able to get all in and really gets his hands in it and do what he wanted to do rather than what friggin' Perlmutter wanted to do.
Which is just not to be able to tell black people apart. So, yeah.
Black Panther? But who's different?
This is like watching a Michael Bay movie. I can't tell what's going on.
Yeah, I really hate Perlmutter.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is it for kind of like the bottom end of the Marvel movies.
It really does pick up quite quickly after this.
So next week we discuss the Russo brothers, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which is a honeymoon movie. Probably going to spend maybe a little extra time on that one because it's so good.
It's weird. We go from a movie that's in my bottom 2 to a movie that's in my top 5.
Yeah, exactly. But if you had any thoughts about Thor: The Dark World, did you like it? Did you not like it? Are we wrong? Please put a comment below. Also, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Geek Salad if you haven't done so already. We're doing these every week leading up into Infinity War, and then I'm sure we'll find another project to work on. Yes. After that, this seems to be doing really, really well view-wise. Yeah, you can also check out our podcast where Mike and I and Joe and our friends Joe and Catherine host. We just posted, thank you, Mike, by the way, just posted our episode about the movies of 1981, which was a fun little romp through time.
It is.
Check those videos. You can check those podcasts out either here on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. You can also check them out at geeksalad.podbean.com, or you can download the Podbean app. Check out Stitcher and their new layout. Also, you can get the podcast right on the iTunes store if that's your thing. You can also follow our geeky musings and news and all that stuff at Geek Salad Radio on Twitter, and follow us on Facebook at Geek Salad Podcast.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds like you covered everything there.
There's a lot of housekeeping on this thing. So anyway, until next time, I'm Andy.
And I'm Mike.
Go forth, be nerdful, and Excelsior. We'll see you next week.